In this tutorial, I'm going to teach you how to create an interaction feature for your video game. These are most heavily used in horror games, but are really good in almost any situation. Ours will be implemented in a first-person scenario. Because of that, I've gone ahead and downloaded the mini first-person controller, which is my personal favorite first-person controller, on the Unity Asset Store. With that in mind, the first thing that we're going to do is create a new C# script, and we're going to call it interactor. And then go ahead and place that on your first-person controller's camera. Moving out of the editor, let's go ahead and open this up in Visual Studio. The first thing that we're going to do here in the update function is create a raycast. So we'll type out raycast hit, call it hit, and we'll say if physics.raycast parentheses camera.main.transform position, comma camera.main transform.forward, and then we're going to say comma out hit, then comma 2 for how far we want this raycast to travel. And we're going to need a layer mask. So we're going to go back up to the top and we're going to make a public layer mask, and we're going to call it interactable layer mask. Then going back into our physics if statement, after the 2, we'll say comma interactable layer mask. And in the parentheses, we're going to say debug.log, and we're going to feed it the parameter of hit.collider.name. Now anything this raycast hits, which is pretty much just a laser shooting out from our camera, is going to log into our console its name. Now let's go ahead and save that and head back into our editor. Using any game object, let's create a new layer, and we'll name it interactable. Once that's done, let's go to our first-person camera and change the interactable layer mask to interactable. And you can see in our inspector that interactable is actually the 8th layer, so if you want, you can actually go into your code and automatically have that set by making the interactable layer mask layer equal to 8. Save that, and we're going to go ahead and test this out with our green sphere, so we'll change its layer to interactable, and let's see how this looks in play mode. Alright, cool. As you can see, it works fine. Now let's go back into the editor. Once there, we're going to create a new C# script, and we're going to call it interactable. And before we edit that, we're actually going to edit our interactor script. This will be temporary, but we're going to go up to the top and we're going to say using Unity engine.events. Then under our layer mask variable, we'll create a Unity event and we'll call it onInteract. And then we're going to go ahead and go to our physics statement, and we're going to replace the debug statement with an if hit.collider.getComponent interactable is not equal to false. Go inside of those parentheses, say if input.getKeyDown, key code E. So now we're ready to edit our interactable script, but first I'll just leave a little commented out statement here. Once we're in our other script, we're going to go up to the top and say using Unity engine.events. Then above our start method, we're going to say public Unity event onInteract. Then we'll go back into our interactor script. And now above our input statement, we're going to say onInteract equals hit.collider.getComponent interactable.onInteract. Now we can replace our commented out statement with onInteract.invoke. Save that, and let's go see if this works. Now Unity events work the same way that buttons do. So we're going to start with something simple. We're going to add the interactable script to our green sphere. And for the onInteract event, we're just going to take a blue sphere, which you can't see. We're going to go to GameObject.setActive, and we're going to make it true. So now if we test this out, and now when we click E on the green sphere, the blue one appears. We can even do the same for the blue sphere and make it so the green sphere appears, and then the blue sphere disappears. And then going back into our green sphere, we'll make it disappear after it turns on the blue sphere. Now testing this out, you'll see that we can go back and forth between the two. The great thing about this method is that it makes it super flexible, as a lot of components have public methods that you can access this way. Towards the end of this video, we'll show you how to make your own. Now let's set this up so the icon changes depending on what interactable we're working with. To do that, we'll go into our interactable script, we'll make a public int variable, and we'll name it ID. You can make this equal to the transform position and rotation of this game object, but for our example, we're just going to make it equal to a random number between 0 and 999,999. I'll show you why we do that later. Then, going back into our interactor script, we're going to delete the onInteract equals hit. Then, we're going to replace our Unity event variable with an interactable variable, and we'll call it interactable. I have no idea why I made it public. Going into our input statement, we're going to add an interactable dot right before the onInteract.invoke. And then above the input statement, we're going to say if interactable is equal to null or interactable.id is not equal to hit.collider.getComponent interactable.id, then we're going to make interactable equal to hit.collider.getComponent interactable. Now we'll see that as opposed to before, this will only be called once. To make sure, we're going to make a new debug.log statement, and we're going to make it say new interactable. After that's saved, we can go ahead and test that. And it seems to be working fine. Heading back into our script, let's get rid of our debug.log statement. We're no longer using Unity events in the script, so we can get rid of the using Unity engine.events. Now we want to set this up so it'll change the interact icon at runtime. To do that, we're going to go to the top and we're going to add using Unity engine.ui. Then, going beneath our interactable variable, we'll create a new public image and we'll name it interact image. Going back into our interactable script, we're going to make a public sprite and we're going to call it interact icon. And then heading back into our interactor script, we could go into this if statement, go beneath our interactable equals hit.collider and say interact image.sprite equals interactable.interact icon. But we want to set this up so you don't actually have to assign an interact icon all the time. So we're just going to go ahead and get rid of that. So we'll go back up to the top and we'll make a public sprite and call it default icon, create another public sprite and call it default interact icon. We'll go after the interactable equals null. We'll make a new if statement. We'll say if interactable.interact icon is not equal to null, then interact image.sprite is equal to interactable.interact icon. And we'll say else interact image.sprite is equal to default interact icon. And then right after our raycast, we're going to make an else statement, and it'll say if interact image.sprite is not equal to default icon, interact image.sprite equals default icon. This will make sure it only happens once at a time. Just to double check, we're going to make a debug.log statement that just says default. We'll save that and see if it works. And now we see that it does work, except our hand isn't the right size. This will happen especially if you're using art off the asset store. So we want a little more freedom and to be able to resize them. To do that, we're going to go under our default icon and we'll make a public vector2 and we're going to make it default icon size. We'll do the same thing for our default interact icon, making a public vector2, call it default interact icon size. Then we'll go down to the bottom and replace our debug.log statement with an interact image.rectTransform.sizeDelta equals default icon size. We'll do the same thing in this else statement, except we'll say interact image.rectTransform.sizeDelta is equal to default interact icon size. Now let's make this customizable with each interactable item. We'll go into our interactable script, make a public vector2 and call it icon size, and then head back into our interactor script. And then we're going to create an if statement under the interactable.sprite equals interactable.interact icon. And we'll say if interactable.icon size is equal to vector2.0, then interact image.rectTransform.sizeDelta is equal to default interact icon size. Else, and this will happen if it has an icon size greater than 0, interact image.rectTransform.sizeDelta is equal to interactable.icon size. Go ahead and save that and head back into our editor. If we look under our canvas, we'll see we have an interact icon, the image that we used earlier, and its actual size is 25, and we actually like this fit. So we'll go to our default icon size and we'll set it to 25, 25. And then for the default interact icon, I know that it looks best at 50, 50. And let's see if this works. Okay, there you go. It works fine. Now let's go back into the editor and set up our door the same way we set up everything else. We're also going to give it a custom interact icon. This one is the same size as the other one that I made, so it also looks good at 50, 50. We actually want our door to open and close whenever we interact with it. To do that, we're going to create our first support script, and it's going to work with the animator, and we're going to call it animation handler. Go ahead and open that up in Visual Studio. And the first thing that we're going to do is make a public animator variable, call it animator. We can go ahead and delete the start and update function. Then we'll make a public void, call it toggle bool, give it a string, call it bool name, all lowercase. And then inside of the brackets, and we'll say animator.setBool, bool name, comma, animator.getBool, bool name. Make sure you put an exclamation point before that. And that's it for our little helper script. We can actually access any public method on mono behaviors through the Unity events that we have set up for our interaction. Let's save that and head back into the editor. For the sake of simplicity, we're going to put this new script on our door frame because that's where the animator is, and I like to keep things organized that way. And then we'll drag and drop its animator into the script, go to our actual door where the interactable script is, and then we'll drag and drop in the door frame, go to the new animation handler script that we have, access our public method, toggle bool, and then for the bool name, we're going to call it open, because as you can see in the door's animator, that's the name that we gave to the bool that allows us to go back and forth between the animations that we want. All there is to do now is to go into play mode and test this out. And there you go. Everything looks the way that we want it to. The icons are changing size and shape, and that's it. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comment section. We try to answer as many of them as possible, and we'll see you next time.